Ancient Greek civilization, which began with the Minoan and later Mycenaean cultures in Crete and the Peloponnese. Think bull leaping, think King Minos, the labyrinth, and the minotaur. And began its decline following the death of Alexander the Great. Think inexplicable Irish accents in that Colin Farrell film. Set the foundations for the entirety of Western political, artistic, and intellectual culture. Why Europe's first civilization was to emerge in the Aegean is unclear, although its proximity to the already ancient and established civilizations of Egypt and Asia Minor may provide a clue. The Minoan and Mycenaean experiment, which reached its peak somewhere around 1400 BC, was set in the later Greek imagination in a so-called heroic age, a time of Heracles and Ajax, Agamemnon, Achilles, and the Trojan War. The Greeks of this period built palaces, wrote things down, and very likely conducted human sacrifice, even of children. And yet around the 12th century BC this established culture disappeared into a centuries-long dark ages. The writing system gets lost. The Hittite Empire across the Aegean suffers the same fate. Egypt is invaded by a mysterious sea peoples, but survives. Why this happened is unclear, although drought, famine, and a series of earthquakes play a central role. Sometime around 800 BC, the Phoenician alphabet begins to spread throughout Greece, and with it, Europe once again emerges into the light. This advance is best represented by the epic poetry that soon follows. Homer's retelling of the Trojan War and its aftermath in the Iliad and the Odyssey, which stands as the pinnacle of a literary tradition that will go on to define and inspire Western artistic culture for the next 3 millennia, from Geoffrey Chaucer to Brad Pitt. It is also around this time that another familiar name makes its entry onto the scene: Sparta. Like Athens, Thebes, Corinth, and so on, Sparta is one city-state amongst many that emerge in this period, and define the political landscape of ancient Greece. Each independent state has its own laws and customs, and thus we see a wide mixture of political ideologies, from the quasi-democratic Athens to the proto-fascist Sparta, although how accurate these terms are is of course subject to intense debate. In fact, much of ancient Greece maintains that intriguing habit of escaping easy or modern characterization. From its enormous pantheon of vengeful and jealous gods that might just as easily destroy the faithful as a system, ancient attitudes to love and sex between men, between women, and with adolescents, right through even to the activities of mathematicians and philosophers, the ancient experience is very unlike our own. Men like Pythagoras, whose famous mathematical formulae stand alongside his less well-known edicts on the eating of beans, or Socrates, the father of Western philosophical tradition, who believed a magical demon spoke to him and told him what to do. Things might be said to improve with Plato and especially Aristotle, but no such luck with the philosopher Diogenes, who spent most of his time sat inside a massive ceramic wine jar masturbating. By the early 5th century BC, we arrive on more steady ground with familiar events such as the Greco-Persian Wars, a series of invasions into Greece by the largest and most powerful empire the ancient world had ever seen, Persia, the famous land victories at Marathon and at sea at Salamis, and the heroic last stand at Thermopylae. These events would be subsequently burnt into the Western consciousness, establishing the myth of a freedom-loving West against a dark and decadent East, forgetting, of course, that the Greek city-states, including Athens, were themselves slave states. This simplistic attitude also ignores the enormous cultural inheritance Europe enjoys and enjoyed from the ancient East. Following these conflicts, Athens ascends as the preeminent Aegean naval power and enters into a golden age. It is at this time that Socrates is teaching his dialectic method. Herodotus is writing the first work of history. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, is born, and the famous Parthenon is built. Once allies, now rivals, a familiar story in ancient Greek political life. Athens and Sparta enter into a 30-year conflict for supremacy on the Greek peninsula. Sparta, with Persian help, overcome their democratic rivals and establish a tyranny in Athens, although their ascendance is relatively short-lived, as they are subsequently crushed by Thebes at the Battle of Leuctra, about 30 years later. It is in this battle, incidentally, that Thebes used tactics that will directly inform the provincial Macedonians, first under Philip, and later his son Alexander, in their efforts to at once unite Greece under their military leadership, and then nip over to meet the Persian army and destroy it. I gather it is something to do with the Greek phalanx and using long spears. Alexander the Great dies in 323 BC. His enormous confederation is broken up among his warring generals, who themselves establish rival dynasties in neighbouring sections of the empire. Perhaps the best known of these is the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt, who rule as pharaohs for 3 centuries. Their final and most famous queen, Cleopatra, eventually falling at the hands of the next major economic and military power in the ancient Mediterranean, the Romans. Thanks for listening. If you like this, subscribe and comment below.